1961, the year Dave Tenney, a 20-year-old apprentice fitter and turner, started out on his quest to build Australia's greatest raceboat, later to be named Aggressor. The project began with the purchase of a Rolls-Royce Merlin aircraft engine, followed by the construction of the boat. The work started in his parents' backyard, where a temporary shed was erected out of recycled materials to house and protect the project. It didn't take too long for the boat and motor to outgrow these surroundings, so it was moved to a nearby factory. Aggressor was first christened in the mid-1960s, but the overall journey to the top actually took 10 years. Dave Tenney was faced with numerous challenges along the way. To mention just a couple, a propeller blade broke off, putting a hole in the bottom of the boat, and they had carburetor fueling problems that choked the motor. It is almost impossible to compute just how many man-hours Dave dedicated, labouring virtually unnoticed for years. A striking testimony to the Australian tradition that what you lack in material resources, you can make up in perseverance and courage. But Dave Tenney capped off these 10 years in glory by establishing Aggressor not only as unbeaten in a record of 10 straight races, but in the estimation of the fans witnessing the races, as being truly unbeatable. The Dave Tenney Aggressor story is like an old-style Hollywood film script, but the team received a crushing blow in 1972 when Aggressor cartwheeled across Hen and Chicken Bay, New South Wales, after hitting a submerged object. With adequate sponsorship, Aggressor may well have continued racing, and possibly in America. She was well up to the class of any boat racing elsewhere in the world, and was worthy of challenging the speed records. However, as a privateer, the financial strain took its toll, and with fellow co-driver Les Scott suffering permanent disability from the accident, it was time to leave this dream and move on. It was in the 1980s that Barry Taylor, an engineer, purchased Aggressor. Barry repaired the hull and rebuilt the Merlin engine until it was purring again. He campaigned Aggressor at 3 events prior to racing a more modern racing boat called Aussie Connection. With the new millennium, Dave Pagano, himself a racing boat driver, became interested in Dave Tenney, Aggressor, and her history. So much so, he purchased Aggressor to restore her to her original glory, for the purpose of keeping an important piece of memorabilia of Australia's racing boat history. The restoration will give future generations the chance to share the dream and appreciate the belief of just about everybody involved in speedboat racing in the 1960s and 70s that Dave Tenney and Aggressor were then, and always will be, Australian sporting legends. In the 1960s, thunderboats emerged in the unlimited class of powerboat racing in Australia. It was not until the early 1970s, after years of failure and frustration, that spectators were able to witness the race of the century. These thunderboats were hydroplanes, powered by Rolls-Royce V12 Merlin aircraft engines, producing approximately 2,500 horsepower, and the ground around the lakes they raced on actually trembled and shook as they roared past at speeds in excess of 250 kilometers per hour. This historical footage shows a heat race and the final between the Australian champion at the time, Stampede, and Aggressor. Stampede, often referred to as the Glen Maggie Monster, held the Australasian speed record at the time of this race. Aggressor, also known as the Jolly Green Giant, defeated Stampede at this race meeting and went on to notch up a record 10 wins from 10 starts. This record was truly amazing, considering Aggressor started every race at the rear of the field, with owner-driver Dave Tenney's philosophy, "If I can't catch them and pass them, I don't deserve to win." While racing against the famous New Zealand hydroplane Air New Zealand, tragedy struck. Aggressor hit a submerged object and cartwheeled across the water at over 200 kilometers per hour. Dave Tenney was injured, and his co-driver was left severely handicapped, reminding us of just how dangerous boat racing can be. Despite extensive damage, Dave Pagano managed to fully restore Aggressor to her original splendor. This magnificent craft now spends her time appearing at demonstrations and shows, commemorating the legend that she was, and always will be.